coordinator Dave Aranda to LSU. First thoughts, here we go again. Wisconsin can't, I guess, I know there's not a long line of coaches who have left for other jobs, but in terms of those Wisconsin has really wanted to keep, initial reaction is here we go again, or we're losing Dave Aranda too soon. Wisconsin didn't do enough to keep them. Find out a day later he's leaving for LSU for $1.3 million, an offer Wisconsin in no way would ever be able to match. Kyle, what was your initial reaction? When you see the 1.3 million, you see Wisconsin lose. I would assume the best defensive coordinator they've ever had for 3 years. Did Wisconsin need to do more to keep him? Did LSU just do too much? How do you kind of feel about it?
Initially, it wasn't a shock. We all saw it coming. It was just a matter of time before Dave Aranda did take another position. And put all the money aside, I think if you just look at it based on a move within the industry and to better your career, I think Dave Aranda obviously made the correct choice. LSU, in the SEC, big-time program, going to be able to recruit the South. He's going to be able to recruit California. Going to be able to get kids that he's never been able to coach, types of athletes that he's never had a chance to get his hands on. I think it was a good move for him. From a career standpoint, everybody can say what they want about Wisconsin trying to keep Dave Aranda, but in the end, LSU, no matter what the money is a better position for Dave Aranda to further his career, and I think it's going to go a long ways, kind of to propel him potentially into the NFL or become a head coach down the road and in the future.
Absolutely. Wisconsin was going to lose him at some point. They almost nearly got him back. Aranda told me that he had decided to stay after or leading up to the Holiday Bowl, so he was coming back, and was rumored with jobs at Miami, Michigan, USC. All came after him to one degree or another. It was just the LSU offer was simply too good to turn down, especially when he gets paid, whether Les Miles sticks around after next season or not. And that's a job that's going to open up a lot of doors for him, more than what was being opened for him at Wisconsin. But this sort of shines light on a different and bigger issue, which is Wisconsin assistant coach pay. Now, in no way should Wisconsin pony up anything close to what LSU gave for Aranda. I don't think personally they should go anything north of $800,000 to keep any assistant. But you look at what other assistants are being paid, not just across the country, but in the Big Ten, and where Wisconsin stands. Last year, they had 2 assistants making over $500,000. The rest were in the bottom after 300 in terms of their national ranking in salaries. I believe it was Ted Gilmore, who's number 319. Does Wisconsin need to get more competitive? Is this something that's stopping the program from being at more of an elite level, do you think? Is this something Wisconsin needs to look into, or, do you think where the money's going currently is more important?
Well, I think it's obviously something that needs to be looked into, and it's something that, as a university, and as a state, they need to make that commitment if that's what they want to do. But again, it comes down to the chancellor, the president, the board of regents, and it's not something that Barry Alvarez can do by himself. He needs the full backing of the university in the state of Wisconsin, and they're not willing to go to that level just yet. And if the program wants to progress and be a program that's in the bowl championship series year in and year out, it's something that they need to do. They do need to push. But Wisconsin being where it's at right now, you're going to constantly compete for the Big Ten West. You're going to possibly have the chance to win the Big Ten championship type of game. But I don't see them as a program that's going to be able to win year in and year out the Rose Bowl or be in the playoffs, where the salary currently sits right now at the university.
Here's the issue I see with all this. I look at the teams that have won around the same number of games as Wisconsin since 2005. We're talking Baylor, TCU, Alabama, Oklahoma, LSU, USC, whoever, Florida State. All of them, Wisconsin ranks 7th in total wins since 2005. I could probably go down to about 12, if not farther, and say all of them are significantly closer to winning a national championship than Wisconsin. Now, if it's not assistant coach salaries, which will not only help you keep your top talent, maybe not a guy like Aranda, who's an elite defensive coordinator, but keep your top talent going forward and in turn attract more talent when it comes to recruiting, what other ways can Wisconsin get over this hump? Because, like you said, they're doing fine, and I don't think the school itself is going to have any incentive to start looking into paying these coaches more or allocating other funds that are going elsewhere into paying assistant coaches. What does Wisconsin do? How do you get to that next level? If I look at other programs across the country that do compete for national championships, one thing they all have in common is they spend money.
Well, my initial thought process would obviously be the assistant coaches and having some sort of stability within the program when it comes to the coaches and the assistant coaches. And that we've seen here, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, that there's been a lot of turnover, not only at the head coaching level, but as well as at the assistant coaching level, and some of that is a product of the good young coaches that they did have in the system. Guys like Dave Dorn, guys like Paul Chryst, Chris Ashes, your Charlie Partridges. These are really talented young coaches that they had in their coaching tree. And a lot of those coaches were bound for bigger and better things. And when I say bigger and better things, I mean head coaching positions. And what increasing the salary would do is it would potentially help keep these assistant coaches there for a longer period, a longer time frame. Not necessarily jumping from a coordinator position to a coordinator position, but allow them to stay there in that coordinator position until they're ready to be a head coaching candidate. Some of these prospects, coaching prospects that Wisconsin's had in the tree, that have jumped to be defensive coordinators or offensive coordinators across the country, not necessarily stay at Wisconsin because they see Wisconsin as a stepping stone type of institution. Along with the coaching salaries, you have to be able to recruit. And I think the academic standards have put a little bit of strain on what Wisconsin can do as far as recruiting the top echelon, top talented prospects across the country. That's another issue that Wisconsin does face. So all in all, I think Wisconsin is kind of stuck in this mold where they're going to be a program where they're going to compete for Big Ten. They're going to potentially win a Big Ten championship. And every once in a while, we may be able to see that name in the playoff system. But I don't think Wisconsin, the university itself, is fully dedicated to making that push, to be an elite program and do whatever it takes, to win on the football field. They're very conservative when it comes to their academics and salary pays. It's just a way that we need to face it as fans that, maybe we're not going to see an elite program here at the University of Wisconsin until some things change.
You just hit on one of my biggest worries for this program, and I think when Aranda left, a lot of people felt this sort of mythical cap on the program that Wisconsin isn't committed to winning as a lot of the top teams in the country are. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, and like I said, Wisconsin isn't and shouldn't pony up $1.3 million, but when you were paying Dave Aranda, what was it, $520,000, which is number 64th highest paid assistant coach in the country, you knew he was an elite defensive coordinator, you knew he had been interviewing for other jobs, really good jobs in the NFL and college football, and he was still, the 13th or 14th highest paid assistant in the Big Ten. If you're not going to pay for Aranda and try and keep him before these huge offers come, who are you going to pay for? And if I'm a fan, I sit here and say, I honestly think, I lose interest if I'm a fan, if I know this team can't win a national championship. Now, I'm not saying they have to for people to be satisfied, but that's the goal year in and year out for anybody of Wisconsin's caliber. If I'm a fan and all of a sudden I feel like Wisconsin's not trying to do that, my interest is lost, or am I off base here?
You're not off base, but when it all comes down to it, the seats will be filled come next September, and they'll be jam-packed throughout the course of the entire season. The university is still going to get their money. They're going to be sold out. There's going to be parking lots full of people. And no matter what we say as fans and how bad we want to win, what it comes down to is the revenue is still going to be there. The university is still going to be getting their money, even if they aren't considered an elite program, or even if they aren't constantly year in and year out in the playoff system. And that's what it comes down to, is there needs to be a full-time commitment, not just from Barry Alvarez. In my opinion, I think Barry Alvarez is committed to making this an elite program, but he is handcuffed when it comes to the university, the chancellor, the board of regents. All those things have to be passed. When you sit down with Dave Aranda and LSU, it takes, 24 hours for the board of regents down in the SEC and the LSU to pass a contract for $1.3 million for Dave Aranda. That would never, ever fly here at the University of Wisconsin. And what it shows is that they are committed, and that is the number one show in the state. They consider LSU football the number one show in the state, and they're going to do anything in their means, to make that the main show, and to get the best people in there, no matter what cost, to win national championships. And Wisconsin's just not ready to make that step. And to be honest with you, I don't see a point in the near future when the University of Wisconsin will be at that point, to be able to make that commitment.
A lot of former coaches who I've talked to who have coached here at Wisconsin, they all usually tell me the same thing. They absolutely love it here, but the commitment from the decision makers, the money that comes in, is on a completely different level than what Wisconsin has. And it's not just SEC, it's a lot of other places in the country where that commitment is just significantly higher to winning than it is at Wisconsin, and the importance of the football program. Now let's talk about money, though, because this program has been one of the most profitable in the country the past 2 years. They were number 2 a year ago in revenue, just behind Texas. Made I think about $150 million. This year they were number 8, made about $130 million. Now, all that money doesn't necessarily go back to the football program. It's got to go to a lot of different places, and this football program has to carry the entire athletic department, which Barry Alvarez has made known has a lot more sports than the SEC schools. So that's something to consider. But when we're looking at Barry Alvarez's comments, and again, we talked about, he's not necessarily the decision maker here, and we got to remember this guy's a football coach who loves to win. I would guess if he could pay Dave Aranda $1.3 million, he'd go ahead and do it without a second thought. But to me, there's a lot of other football programs who are in worse position financially that find a way to keep their top talent. What is it about Wisconsin that, the football program, I guess, doesn't have as much say as where the money goes, the money that they're making?
What it comes down to, and I guess I can't say it enough, is it comes down to a commitment. It's got to be a commitment from not just Barry Alvarez, which and again, I mentioned, I think he is committed to winning. It comes down to a commitment from the president and the chancellor that, this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going to stick that money into. We're going to feed these programs, and we're going to do everything in our power to continue to generate as much revenue as possible. If you look at it from a devil's advocate point of view, they'll say, well, there's going to be a bunch of people upset if they have to increase ticket prices, and they have to increase your hot dogs and your drinks, whatever it may be. And I don't buy that. If you increase your season ticket sales, you increase the ticket by $10 each year. I'm not going to lie. I don't think a lot of people are going to pass up the opportunity to go to Camp Randall. No matter what the price tag is, people are going to go and fill that stadium. So to me, I don't see that as an excuse. It's just what it comes down to is it comes down to a full-time commitment. to making sure that we put more money into this football program, into the assistant coaches' salaries, and we continue to put a product on the field that will continue to grow and potentially be year in and year out in this playoff system, so we can win a national championship one day down the road, but the commitment's just not there, and it's fairly obvious that it's not there. I'm not saying like you mentioned, $1.3 million for all the coordinators. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is to increase those salaries from the 500 range for the coordinators to the 800 range. That keeps them from sniffing around at other places. That keeps them content. And it's something that needs to be done if Wisconsin wants to be considered an elite program in the Big Ten and across the country.
That's interesting. You're going 800. I don't think I'd even go that high, but I'm more concerned about maybe rising stars in the program right now. I look at a guy like Ted Gilmore who's making the 319th most in the country among assistant coaches. And if I'm an FBS program and I'm saying, okay, I need a wide receivers coach. Here's a guy who's put people in the NFL, has coached in the NFL. Giving this guy a 25-30% raise is nothing to me. And Durante Jones, the same thing. I mean, I know he's only been here 1 year, but he had one of the best secondaries in the country this year. And regardless of who returned from last year, this was a secondary that was picked on time and time again in 2014. Now Wisconsin finishes, I believe it was third in the nation in pass defense. Wisconsin, I think, needs to protect these guys now. You know what you have. These are going to be hot commodities in a year or two. Why are they making so little?
And what they'll say is that they'll find somebody else to fill that role, and they'll win the same amount of games that they're winning now. And that's kind of been the motto from day one. Is it doesn't matter who's in those roles. In those roles, we'll find somebody to replace them at the same price point, and we'll still be able to win games. However, we won't get over that hump to win a national championship, but we'll still be competitive. And we'll still put a good product on the field, and we'll still fill a seat. And that's what they're okay with, and that's what the university foresees. And I don't see that going anywhere other than where it's at right now as far as consistency on the football field. It's going to be, 9-3, 10-3 seasons, and you're going to compete for the Big Ten, but, a long shot to win a national championship, and I guess they're okay with that at the university.
And one thing I will give Wisconsin credit for is this program has been extremely resilient through 3 coaching turnovers in 4 years. They're not wrong in saying they can get somebody to fill those roles at the same price and keep costs down and still win based on the last decade or so. That's exactly what they've done. The way I see it, and the way I think a lot of fans are starting to see it now, is you've got a product that's been so stable despite little help in recruiting. As I've talked about time and time again, this program has one of the most unique recruiting challenges in the country when you're talking about academic standards and the combination of that and trying to get people from Florida, California, Virginia, wherever up here and kind of get past that stereotype of Wisconsin just to see the place. And then you're talking about the commitment from the university itself, how low it is compared to the other top programs in the country. To me, this program is still a sleeping giant to some degree. If you could ever get those two things together. And one of the biggest takeaways I had from that Holiday Bowl win, I know it was an 8-6 USC team. I know it was the Holiday Bowl. I know Wisconsin had a lot more to play for than USC did. But one thing I took away was, man, Wisconsin was just flat out better than USC. And that's a program that's recruited the elite of the elite the past 5 years, coaching turnover or not. Those guys have a lot of NFL players on them, and Wisconsin beat them. I know the score was only a 2-point game, but Wisconsin won three of those 4 quarters probably when you add up the time on there. And so I see, these 2 things, really 3 things really hurting Wisconsin. I just feel like if you could ever have the kind of the SEC, I guess, backing that those schools get, what could this program be?
Yes, I agree 100%. And like you said, Wisconsin flat out beat USC. And the surprising part to me was it seemed like Wisconsin had, man for man, just as many athletes on the field as USC, if not better athletes. And you saw the defense flying around, using their athleticism. And what that comes back to is it comes back to scheme and how those players are used. If you stick those players into a 4-3 defense and you play conservative, USC might be able, probably beats Wisconsin. But you get a smart coach, you get a young coach who has a great strategy, a great philosophy, and he puts players in the position to win and to be successful. And that's what Dave Aranda does. And we've struggled many years with coordinators. Matt Canada, for example. How unhappy were we when Matt Canada was here at Wisconsin calling plays for the University of Wisconsin? With Dave Huxtable on the defensive side of the ball was here for a little stint, and how frustrated we were with him. To have good coaches and to have good coordinators, they're few and far between. And when you get them here, you need to do your best to keep them here, because the wins will definitely come when they're in those positions.
And just a point of reference to kind of go what you were talking about, just to compare coordinators, how much of a difference was it between Coach Ash, who's now the Rutgers head coach, and Coach Aranda, who were basically dealing with the same type of talent? And I know Coach Partridge was part of that a group with Coach Ash kind of splitting the defensive coordinator duties, but talk about a huge gap between those three and using the similar type of talent. It was basically the same, and Coach Aranda made it an elite defense with the same players. Again, you weren't going to keep him maybe even past next season, or definitely not the season after that, but if you had this guy for 2 more years, and even if you had an offense this season, we're talking about a team that's probably 11-1 and going into that Big Ten championship game.
Yep, and not disputing anything that the kids make the plays. Obviously, coaches don't tackle, coaches don't throw picks, coaches don't throw touchdowns, coaches don't fumble the ball. Whatever it may be. But what coaches do, if you get a smart guy with a great philosophy and he knows where to put players in positions to make plays, you're going to see so many wins, and it's night and day when you can get guys in the position to make plays. And not only that, Dave Aranda was a great motivator. Some coaches just have it, and they know how to motivate kids. They're great teachers, brilliant mind, and that's the thing that separates Dave Aranda from a Chris Ash type guy. Is you can get kids in the right position to make plays, and he did an outstanding job at that. And from what I've heard and what I've seen, one of the best teachers around. It's tough to see him go. Obviously, he was going to go eventually, but those are the type of guys that you need to protect. Guys that put players in the right position to make plays.
Transitioning to hoops talk, Wisconsin, just when you think they are going to turn their season around, Melo Trimble hits a 25-footer to end their upset bid as the number 3 Terrapins escape Madison with a 63-60 win. Wisconsin, battled one of the best teams in the country for 40 minutes. It got a little bit away from them at times in the second half, had 2 8-point deficits, but it never really got out of hand. My biggest takeaway, I'm almost afraid to say it because I know how this team has looked at times, and they can't score the basketball, but they're coming around. Do you think that this is about? Do you think this loss and how they played against Maryland will turn their season around and maybe sneak the Badgers into the NCAA tournament here?
It's possible. I do like what I've seen from Wisconsin. They are what you consider on the upswing. That being said, they do have 2 tough games coming up, so it's really going to be integral to see what kind of recovery they have coming after that loss, heartbreaking loss. and you wonder if the kids are going to be able to keep their head up after that one. Hung in there so tough, came down to that last deep bomb by Trimble, but it's going to be interesting to see how they recover and what they play like against Northwestern, Michigan State, and these two games coming up. You never want to say that they're must-wins, but they are wins that Wisconsin needs desperately if they hope to get into the NCAA tournament coming up.
I should have said this was my biggest takeaway, but teams are really having trouble with Wisconsin when they're on defense. Wisconsin has been outstanding for long stretches of games, even though Maryland shot, I think it was 53.9% in the first half. The Badgers came back in the second and really slowed them down quite a bit. They ended it, Maryland with a season low 63 points. They've held 6 of their last 10 opponents to a season low. Mark Turgeon, Maryland's head coach, said that was the most physical game they've played all season by far, and they've played some really good teams. Wisconsin defensively, I've been so worried about the offensive end and the lack of production from the two stars, Koenig and Hayes, and just how that team doesn't fit together too well offensively. Has it been surprising to you, like myself, in the sense that they've been able to hang in games against high-scoring opponents like Indiana, Purdue, and Maryland without being able to keep up offensively and really shoot above 42% in any of those games?
Yeah, it's kind of it seems like a Wisconsin trademark where Wisconsin teams go periods of long offensive droughts. I can remember back in the day, 10 years ago up till now, where it's kind of like a trademark of Wisconsin where they go through these offensive droughts, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, sometimes up to 10, that really can handicap a team when they're trying to win big games. And the thing about this team that I've noticed is prior to last year's team is they can fight. They know how to fight to get it even, but they don't know how to put head, if that makes sense. This team this year, it seems like they can push, they fight to get back up to even, but they can't push ahead. They seem to fall back down afterwards. That they just can't get over the hump in close games. They can keep it even, but they just don't know how to win. And the team last year knew how to win. They knew how to get it done. They knew how to get over the hump during crunch time. And that's something that with a young team, you hope to see throughout the course of the season, that they were able to get over the hump. And maybe yesterday's game, 2 days ago, is a game that gets them to the point where they know how to win, or they know how to finish now. And coming up, Northwestern, Michigan State, like I said, these are 2 games. They're going to be close games, and hopefully this team will be able to finish and get over the hump here this week with 2 games coming up.
I'll tell you what, I noticed that too in the Maryland game. It seemed like it was a 1 point or a 2 point game for so much of that second half, and every big shot Wisconsin had, they could not make. And even though on the other end they were shutting Maryland down, I think Coach Gard said they left 28 points on the board when talking about shots that they took from 5 feet or less. And if you combine that with the free throw shooting, Wisconsin wins that game by double digits without question. Even if it's 15 points on the board, cut it in half or close to half from Gard's estimate, Wisconsin walks out of there with a double digit victory versus the number 3 team in the country. Do you think that team is that good? Was it an admiration in terms of how close they were to beating Maryland to some degree? Or do you think Wisconsin is getting to a point where maybe they're not a top 25 team or on the border of a top 25 team, but this is one of those Bo Ryan-esque teams, I guess you could say, that's able to beat anyone on any given night?
I do think they're able to beat anybody on any given night. I think the team is young, and I think that's the key word for this team. And I think that's how we're going to portray it the rest of the year. It's a young team, and they just do not know how to win yet. It's something that comes, and it's something that I hope is still yet to come this season. You don't want to look forward to next year and play that game. But if we were to say, let's look forward to next year, say Nigel comes back, I mean, this is a team that they can only grow on the season they've gone through thus far. All the close games, and all the barn burners that they've been through. And you just hope that with the close losses that they've had early in the season, eventually towards the end of the season, those close losses will turn into close wins or potentially double-digit wins. And I see that being in the industry, coaching, that you got to find guys who just know how to win, and it takes time for them to do that. And I think Wisconsin, with Nigel, with Bronson, with Vito, some of the upperclassmen, meshing with the younger guys, I think eventually they can become a team that wins close games and not loses them as they've done so thus far this season.
It's still too early to ask this, but I just will, because it was something that I read on the board and something I found really interesting. Would it benefit this team to even make the NCAA tournament? Do you think a first or a second round loss benefits them as much as making a deep run in the NIT tournament and winning, just stringing 4 to 5 games together if they can do it against, I guess, halfway decent opponents? Would you rather see them make a deep run in the NIT, or is keeping that streak of consecutive NCAA tournament appearances important to the program?
Well, I think the NIT, if you look at it from the NIT portion, if you could string along some wins, I think that'd be great. That's almost like the bowl season for college football, where you get those couple extra weeks of practice, you get a couple extra weeks of drills with the guys. However, you want to be in the big dance. Nobody's playing to be in the NIT, and you want the young guys, the freshmen, to get a sniff of what the big dance is all about, for the future. If you can string along a couple wins in the NIT, if you say you make it to the NIT championship game, what's saying that you can't string 2 or 3 together in the NCAA tournament to make to the Sweet 16? The kids aren't playing for the NIT, and from a coach's point of view and a player's point of view, they don't want to be in the NIT. They want to be in the big dance, and you want the kids to get a sniff of that going into next season, especially since you're returning so many guys next season, 2016-2017 year.
Well, I understand nobody wants to be there, and that's not the goal, but what would benefit the team more, do you think? You think winning a bunch of games versus halfway decent opponents would benefit this group of young players rather than, I guess, a first round exit, or how do you kind of feel? I guess I don't know the question, because Wisconsin's never been to the NIT. I don't know how that benefits people, but does winning 4 or 5 games in a row mean more than one loss? I guess.
If you put it that way, yeah. I mean that's always a positive if you can string together a bunch of wins at the end of the year. But I don't think you can the experience at the level of the NCAA tournament. I don't think that's something that you can make up, in NIT or even in the off season. I think that's something that's just an amazing feat. It's a feat for the team to be able to go through the preparation, to be able to be part of the big dance. I think that's something that's just you can't put boundaries on. And I think that's something that making it to the NCAA tournament, that's if they're shooting for something, I think the most beneficial thing for the team would be to make that tournament, try to win a game, try to win 2 games, and see what happens. But you can't put a price on the experience of being in the NCAA tournament, in my mind.
Yeah, but if I told you this team could lose in the first round, let's say by 10 or more in the first round, maybe play in the 10-7 game, 11-6 game, obviously they're the highest seed, or win the NIT, which one would you rather see, and which one do you think helps this team more?
If we're playing that game, you'd rather see them.
Yeah, we're playing that game. I know the goal is to make the NCAA. I'm not implying Wisconsin should try and blow their games so they can get to the NIT. I'm just saying, it may not be ideal to make the NIT, but how much better would it make them to make a deep run rather than get knocked out of the first round?
Well, if you're playing that game, obviously it would be good for them to win the NIT.
Okay.
If you're comparing the other first round exit in the NCAA tournament or winning the NIT, but what's saying that Wisconsin, the way they've played this season, gets in the NIT and loses in the first round there too? Wisconsin that they've shown that they can win any given night, but they've also shown that they can lose any given night. So say they make it to the NIT and end up playing a team like a mid-major out of the Horizon, another Green Bay or another Milwaukee.
Oh
They're
boy.
more than capable of losing another game like that. So I think you put your eggs in the basket. I think it'd be better, to shoot for the NCAA tournament, like you say. But I don't see Wisconsin being any better than their first round loss of the NIT or first round loss of the NCAA tournament.
Wisconsin Northwestern, 6 p.m. from Evanston. The Badgers will look to get their second Big Ten win of the season versus an up-and-coming Northwestern team that's got a lot of young talent on it and always seems to give Wisconsin some fits at their place. Do you see Wisconsin getting it together on Tuesday and coming out with a road win, as you mentioned, a desperately needed win?
I do not. I'll be honest with you. I've seen quite a bit of Northwestern this year. I've had a chance to watch them on TV quite a bit, and that's a tough place to play. I'll tell you what. Going into that dungeon, barely ever any crowd there. That's going to be a tough one for Wisconsin. It's a desperation type time for Wisconsin. I think they do need a win here because Saturday Michigan State coming to town. That's another hard one. But I think personally, I'm going to see Wisconsin dropping 2 in a row this week and setting up for a long rest of the year for the Badgers. But obviously, really hope that they can pull out a couple wins and prove me wrong this week.
I'll go ahead and say the Badgers win. I liked what I saw. I don't think they're going to leave as many opportunities around the rim as they did again. I think they'll shoot better from the field. I've seen the last couple games some big steps, I think, and if you can really turn every game into a fist fight, that's going to bother a lot of people. And, these teams in the Big Ten that have come out with a win against Wisconsin, we're talking about 3 Big Ten title contenders with very explosive offenses, 3 of the top offenses in the country in Indiana, Maryland, and Purdue. I don't know that Northwestern has that kind of firepower. I think Wisconsin will bother them from the tip and come out with a win. I've believed in this team from the beginning for some reason. I don't know why, because every time I watch a game, I don't want to say it's an eyesore, but it's very, very ugly. But I will say that the ugliness is getting better, and they're right there. I think if they can just keep making these games ugly, I don't think the offense isn't as needed as I initially thought. I think they can get by in a game like Northwestern where they still have more talent than that team. Now, that team's playing better basketball. That team plays better together. But I think a team like Wisconsin will bother an offensively handicapped Northwestern team in my mind. So we'll see. Wisconsin-Northwestern on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Kyle, thanks for joining us, and we will get back to you later in the week.
All right, sounds good, man. Appreciate it. Go Badgers.